Hi, my name is David. I also go by DD Gant online, and I would like to talk about The Black Wyrm of Brandonsford by Chance Dudinack. I recently ran this adventure for my in-person play group. We play every week, and it took us about 4 or 5 weeks to get through the entire adventure. You probably have heard of it. It's pretty popular online, especially in the OSR circles. And I just want to recount our experience and my thoughts on the general writing and presentation. I'll kind of go through page by page and talk about how my group interacted with everything and how I ended up running it. They ended up coming into the town based off of hearing rumors of a dragon in the forest. And as soon as they came into town, they were kind of immediately accosted by the town reeve over here, who offers them 1,000 gold to kill the dragon, which isn't a lot of gold for a dragon, especially considering this is a fairly high hit dice monster. Of course, there is a lot of kind of tricks and stuff and things you can do to subdue it other than just direct combat, but they were pretty unimpressed with the offer of 1,000 gold, even at level 1. However, it was the adventure we were playing. So with the kind of idea that, of course, there would be other loot and magic items and treasure from the dragon's hoard, they kept continuing. But they did try and kind of bargain with the townsfolk to, get more. But there isn't really anything to offer from the town because it is such a small village. I did put a little bit of time pressure on them by having a kind of a nearby liege send his knight and men-at-arms on their way to kill the dragon. So they had this rumor that there was a larger army coming to slay the dragon, which, if that would have happened, then of course that army would have taken all of the treasure hoard for themselves. So there was a bit of time pressure on the players to figure it out, investigate the mystery, and possibly, slay or capture the dragon or whatever they would end up doing. I think I forgot to actually provide any of the rumors. I don't know how that slipped my mind, but I think the second night in at the town, they ended up just kind of calling for a town hall where I just gathered all of the NPCs in the Clumsy Fox Tavern, including the hirelings for hire, and they kind of everybody just exposed all their information at that time, and kind of got it all out of the way, instead of having to go from place to place and talk to each person. Although they did end up going to the alchemist Ingrid separately because I didn't have her show up to the town hall because she is socially awkward, it says in the module. So they interacted with her a little bit, realized they couldn't really buy any super helpful magic items. My players are quite new, so they don't know that that's not a thing in old school D&D. So I think they ended up getting the mandrake root tea, and they didn't end up really digging into the whole secret admirer side quest line or the missing booze side quest line until quite deep into this module, but they did end up interacting a little bit with it. We'll get to that in a second. They ended up hiring Lady Hilda and Squints, who helped them in their fight with the dragon later, and neglected to hire either Malzazarik or Drop Dead Ned, who promptly left town after that first meeting. So they were kind of shit out of luck for getting more hirelings in that regard. So they dealt a lot with Warwick the Smith. That was really, I also forgot to, what's the word? Telegraph. I forgot to telegraph all of Warwick's superstitious charm stuff, which kind of backfired and ended up making it difficult to hint at the fairy visitor side quest scenario. But there was kind of enough happening that didn't really matter in the end anyways. So the first thing they did was set out to go to the barrow mound. Of course, they, naturally pass directly by the giant's house, which they ended up stopping at, going inside, and they actually had a fairly high-level thief in their party, a carryover from my previous campaign, who was able to very easily rescue Brother Dirk, who's wrapped up in a sack inside the giant's house, as well as pickpocket the giant's necklace, which was pretty fun to have that actually happen. All while the giant was sleeping, they leave and continue on to the tomb, where Brother Dirk shows them the way. They get to the barrow mound, and they go inside. They never figured out that the wall mosaics were valuable, which, even though I hinted at that it was sparkling, they kind of promptly forgot about that. They dealt with the goblins, ended up parlaying with them with the promise that if the goblins helped them clear out the crypt, then they could have the crypt as their new base, which is one of the goblins' goals. So they go down into the second level, where the goblins promptly flee at the first random encounter, which was Sir Alfred, who they end up slaying. They do find the secret door that goes from the shrine to the sorry, I'm saying a lot. That goes to the maiden's room, and then they can't figure out the puzzle with the maiden because they didn't go to the required room that has the solution. So they just end up forcing it. They pick the lock on the door to the tomb, and the maiden attacks. They destroy her. They enter the tomb of Brandon really carefully. They're like super scared there's going to be traps, but there isn't anything. And then they loot all of the treasure. There is an error here in the map, because on the physical map, or the drawn map, of level 2, it shows the secret passage going from area 11 to 19, which makes sense. However, in the text, the secret passage is in area 10. And area 10 is the shrine, and area 11 is the slime pool. However, if you look here, area 10 is the slime pool and area 11 is the shrine. So this greatly confused me because I didn't notice it until the middle of play, which was super unfortunate. And so what I ended up doing is, because I had already searched this room, and then they went in here and they found the secret door, and I told them they found the secret door, and then I looked at the map and I realized eventually what had happened. So I had the secret passage go from the bottom of room 10 and then just go back east, like, 80, 100 feet or whatever, and then south into area 19. So that was a little obnoxious. One of the kind of first of many little editing mistakes that made this a slight headache to run, which I wasn't expecting, considering how popular this adventure is. And no disrespect to Chance, of course. So once they got the sword, they neglected to explore the rest of the tomb. They kind of figured that they had bypassed the main things, and since they found the secret passage, they got what they needed. So they left, returned back to Brandonsford, sold the little bit of treasure that they had, slept a couple nights, and then set out again. So this was between sessions, and in the interim, I decided that the giant woke up, realized his necklace was stolen, and that he assumed it was the goblins that did it, because he has this predisposition towards goblins and mistakes humans for goblins, according to the text. So I have him, while the adventurers are in town, go over to the goblin castle and essentially destroy it, asking for his necklace back, and then relocate the goblins from the castle to the tomb of Brandon, which has now been cleared out. I forgot to mention, but they also killed Sir Wilt's skull, which removes all of the wandering monsters essentially from the dungeon. So makes it relatively safe for the goblins to inhabit. So I have them move over there, unbeknownst to the players, of course. So they come back. Next thing they want to do is go to the dwarven mine because they're trying to get Warwick the smith to make them stuff, but he can't do it because he doesn't have any ingots, which he's told that the dwarves probably have some. And at this point, they have no idea that, there's anything wrong with the dwarves or whatever. So they go north, and I think immediately I roll a random encounter for the dragon. So the first time they see the dragon, I have them see the dragon across the river on the other side of this log here, and I tell them that it's kind of the only place to cross. It's like where it creates a dam or whatever. They see the dragon from across the river. They immediately flee back to Brandonsford, and I think they just wait another day and wait it out in town. Can't quite remember what they do, but nothing necessarily productive. They go back to that area the next day. The dragon is gone, and they proceed across this and follow the river north. They pass the destroyed caravan, which the goblins are looting, and the goblins are bringing the loot not back to the castle, but back to the tomb, which I just kind of designate in my mind that they're taking a route that goes up the river and then kind of crosses up here by the mountains and then back down. So they have horses at this point because I kind of unintentionally just let them buy whatever horses they wanted, even though Brandonsford wouldn't necessarily have had that. And I've since fixed that point of procedure. But anyways, I let them all buy war horses because why not? So they all have war horses. They cross the river with their horses where the river is low. They stumble across the goblins looting this destroyed caravan, and they just charge the goblins and totally slaughter them. We use the charging rules, which is the first time I've actually used the charging rules in BX, and that was really fun. Yeah, so they interrogate one for a couple rounds, who tells them that I think the goblins, that they are in the tomb, and the name Hogboon comes up a couple of times. Hogboon is, of course, the Goblin King, and yeah, so I think this is all done fairly well. These are interesting encounters so far, and it was really fun playing out this part. Somewhere in the middle there, I'm just remembering this now. They also did deal with the missing booze quest line. So one of those nights, the elf of the group accepts the job to watch the cellar, which is being, supposedly robbed, the cellar of the Golden Egg Tavern. I describe, this cluricon, which is a type of leprechaun, coming in, uncorking a barrel, sitting down invisibly, and, starting to consume liquor. And they didn't really have any sort of plan at all. So they just stand up, reveal themselves immediately to the cluricon and kind of scare him away. And then they go to, wait till the next night. I rule that the cluricon really wants his booze, so he comes back. Maybe he's not too smart or whatever, but he comes back the second night. This time they set up a massive bear trap at the base of the stairs, and it's very dark. And, I rule that the cluricon's dark vision or infravision doesn't help him see the bear trap. He gets a chance to notice it. He misses it. He steps in the bear trap. It does max damage and basically cuts him in half. So they kill him immediately, unintentionally, which was a super interesting resolution to that quest because that's not what's supposed to happen at all. And I was probably too lax on the rules there. I probably shouldn't have had him come back, or should have had him notice the trap in hindsight. But it was a very interesting resolution anyways. So they figure that problem out, get paid by the innkeeper, who kind of regrettably thanks them for, the murder of this fairy, and they bury him and all that stuff, and definitely feel bad about it. So anyways, back to the destroyed caravan. They go to the destroyed caravan, kill some goblins. They continue north. They never find the goblin castle ever. Because there's not really any reason to go there, since I have the goblins from the caravan going to the barrow mound instead. So that pretty much just gets bypassed completely, which I guess I can touch on briefly. There's not really a lot in the Goblin Castle. I wasn't a huge fan of these keys. There's just really nothing happening, which was surprising to me. Like Hogboon as a character is quite cool, and the goblins, wearing their goblin-y versions of their kind of scrapped armor and stuff like that, like creating the effigy. It's cool scenery, but like that's about it. There's also another error here where it says that Hogboon sits on his throne counting his pot of glittering gold coins, but it actually never says how many gold coins that contains at all. It doesn't give him a treasure amount or anything, at least that I can see. There is a pot of gold here. However, I believe this is supposed to be the leprechaun or the clericon's pot of gold, not Hogboon's. I think Hogboon's is a separate pot of gold. Regardless, that's never really clearly explained either way that I know of. So that was a little bit annoying. But yeah, other than that, the Goblin Castle, there's really not a lot in it. The barrow mound is quite, the main dungeon here. I would guess the Goblin Castle is more built to just be kind of a combat encounter, or maybe not even, because it seems like the implication is that the party gets either taken prisoner or parlays with Hogboon. They don't fight him, which mine did end up fighting him. So we'll get to that. So they go to the dwarven mine. They investigate the cabin and the mine shaft. This part was also a little bit frustrating because of the layout as well as just the design. So they were absolutely convinced that there was stuff beyond the cave-in of the mine, which, I mean, perhaps there is, but this adventure doesn't highlight that. So I kind of had to eventually hint to them that, like, no, this doesn't lead anywhere. They were kind of, I think, expecting some sort of dungeon or like that, maybe a backdoor to the dragon's den, which in hindsight is actually a cool idea, and I probably should have done that. But anyways, the way that this page is written is quite confusing because the way that it's read, this part here, dead body, this line right here, dead body under cave-in, is actually only relating to this line here, dead body from the cave-in. It does say cave-in right here, but there's also dwarven corpses in the broken down log cabin. So just the way that these headings work, it's quite confusing. I would have much preferred the caved in mine shaft to have been its own section. I just got very jumbled here, even having pre-read it. I was very confused, like which dwarf is the one that died? How did he die? Because it doesn't really get into details about how he died. It just says killed by the cave-in, but he happens to be wearing this soul-catching ring, so you can talk to him. It doesn't really explain why he's wearing a soul-catching ring, or like, was he killed by his brother? Did the dragon / dwarf cause the cave-in? I don't know. It was it's a little hard to glean this, and it was a little bit difficult for me to run. Not to mention this system of searching the wreckage, the amount of turns this actually takes to do, like to search through it all is quite a lot. And I rolling for random encounters, which happened. They did come across some goblins during those random encounters, but it is a little bit tedious and kind of unnecessary to just stand there searching the same pile of wreckage for multiple turns. There wasn't really a whole lot of consequences other than, a little goblin encounter. I mean, I guess the dragon could have wandered over, but it was a little bit boring, especially, because it's not just like these 6 items. They have to find each of these mining picks 7 mining picks in each of these 5 corpses separately. So it's a lot of time to clear this out. And if you're actually rolling for every single encounter, that would be really brutal. So I ended up just saying, okay, you can take about 2 hours and you find everything, kind of thing, which I highly recommend you do. And it does say all items can be found if they search long enough, but I don't know, could have been written better, I think, or designed a little bit better there. So they deal with that. They figure everything out. They didn't put the soul catching ring on for like a really long time. Actually, I don't think they ever put it on. I had them later when they go to the witch of the woods, Vivian. I had her put the ring on and talk to Grimney and then relate that information to the players because they just weren't doing it and didn't really seem to get it or care about that, even after, she kind of helped identify it for them. Because I ruled that she knew what it was because she knew Grimney and talked to him, and he was her favorite or whatever it says here in the text. So after they get the ingots and the treasure from the dwarven mine, they go back to Brandonsford. They wait a little bit longer for Warwick to create a suit of plate armor for the dwarf, as well as a couple swords and things like that. And then they do go to the witch of the woods, who recommends, they ask Ingrid to bring them because they know that she's associated with the witch. So because Ingrid is there, there's not really any question about whether the witch is evil or not. Ingrid's with them. They kind of know it's not a threat. So they have a conversation with Vivian. This all plays out fairly well. It was good. They give Vivian some gifts that they had gotten from previous adventures. I have Vivian call off the nixies that are around her pond and give the players the rest of the treasure. And I think, so this was a little bit disappointing as well, because you can see all the white space on this spread here and in previous spreads where this is an issue. Vivian does not have a stat block, which is a little bit permissible because you're very unlikely to actually fight Vivian. The nixies also don't have a stat block, although the giant does. So just some inconsistencies here. The fawns also don't have a stat block. And I know that these are layout mistakes because the first version does have fawn stat block. I'm pretty sure. And I think possibly the witch stat block as well. So that's a little bit annoying for such an acclaimed adventure. I would have thought that would have been, caught by an editor, but no big deal, no worries. Just something to look out for. You just have to make those notes yourself. So they go to the Witch of the Woods. She recommends them to the Fawns thing, the Fawns Forest, for the tree sap that can supposedly put the dragon to sleep. They have an interesting conversation with the Fawns because Vivian tells them beforehand, because they're being so nice to her and giving her all these gifts. She tells them that the Fawns are they're interested in sentimental items. So they bring the Fawns the pickaxes, as well as they convince Ingrid to get the love letters from Warwick back. Or they don't convince her, sorry. They convince Ingrid to tell them about the love letters that she sent to Warwick. And then on the promise that they won't reveal that fact to him, one of the characters goes to the blacksmith. The elf character goes to the blacksmith, pretends that he was the one that was sending the love letters to Warwick, and essentially acts like a weird stalker, which was clever and funny at the same time because it makes Warwick relieved that there's not this weird fairy presence that is like obsessed with him and bringing him gifts and stuff like that. And also he is not interested, so he's happy to give back the love letters to the elf who claims that they were from him. And then Ingrid is spared embarrassment. They did initially kind of plan on, at least a couple of the players were interested in like patching up, being those matchmakers and patching up that kind of distant love connection there, but they never ended up really following through on it. And as a result, they never ended up getting the, what's it called, the Firelight Citrine from Ingrid, which can be used as a weapon in the against the dragon, which would have been very useful for them during that fight, but they didn't end up doing that. So they do go to the Fawn's Grove with all that memorabilia. They interact with the Fawns, bargain with them, end up securing 2 saddlebags worth of the sap, when their plan is to essentially they end up buying a pig, covering it in the sap, the sweet sap, and then bringing the live pig over and like staking it into the ground on a leash directly in front of the dragon's den. So once they're all prepared, that happens. They travel over to the dragon's den, and they do that. Before I get to the dragon, I'll just go over the wandering encounters. I totally missed this table here. I never rolled for wandering encounters on the stream table, which is a shame because they walked by the stream many times. The wandering encounters that we did have was drunk goblins, and that was when they were exploring the dwarven cave. And I tracked the total number of goblins throughout the adventure. The idiot dragon hunters I never found. The sprites came up 3 or 4 times, which was pretty obnoxious after the first couple of times, but I played it out anyways. They end up cursing one of the party members that tries to catch one of them. Ended up using the buck teeth example, which went away after 1d6 days or whatever. The dragon signs encounter happens. The golden fox encounter happens multiple times. Once at the very beginning of the adventure when they haven't even gotten to Brandonsford yet, and then they see it 2 more times, and all 3 times they fail at catching it because one of the times the thief was absent and they just miss their shots, and the encounter distances are too great for them to sneak up on a fox. They do encounter the Feyhounds, as well as the elvish hunters, and the goblin scavengers as well, and the dragon. As I mentioned before, they encountered the dragon once. For the pompous elvish hunters and the Feyhounds, interaction was minimal. For the interaction with the Feyhounds, since these guys are hunting the golden foxes, the party misdirects the Feyhounds. Well, actually, that's not true. They direct the Feyhounds truthfully to where they did last see the golden fox, which was, I had randomly determined, walking in the direction of the dragon's den. So when they later go to the dragon's den, they see those Feyhounds dead in front of the cave. So that, then they put 2 and 2 together that, they probably caused that. One thing that I completely glossed over, at some point before they go back to the dragon, one of the party members really wants to exact revenge on the goblins that abandoned them when they were clearing out the barrow mound. So they go to the barrow mound pretty much with the sole intention of finding those specific goblins and killing them as an act of justice. And this character was lawful, so that was kind of his justification for it, because they had, promised to help them, and they retreated like cowards because they are goblins. So I tallied up the total amount of goblins. I had them all just in the first layer, the first level of the barrow mound. I had Hogboon relocate his throne and throne room to area 6. And then the effigy I relocated to area 2. So I essentially took the goblin castle, as it were, and then just spread it out in the first level of the barrow mound, which was fun. That was cool to reuse that and have the, the scene change in that way and the world change in that way, based on the actions of the players. So they go into the first room, they see the goblins there. I'm pretty sure they just immediately attack. And then I tell them that they can hear a lot more goblins in rooms 5 and 6, because I think in total there's like 20 or 30 goblins. So they end up creating a bit of a bottleneck here between areas 2 and 5, where they essentially just rain down chaos on the goblins because they all have such good armor and weapons at this point that it's really a moot point, and it's pretty effortless for them. And then I believe one of them challenges Hogboon, or like calls out Hogboon specifically to speak with him, which of course Hogboon is he's written as this very prideful, egotistical, rude, king-like guy, and he has this control over the goblins. So he calls them off, and all the goblins stand at the edge of the party's lantern light. Hogboon enters the room and kind of very confidently, openly confronts the party, asks them what they want. The party tells him that they claim justice on the goblins that betrayed them for helping them clear out this very barrow mound. Hogboon agrees and thinks that's a valid claim. However, that those goblins are already dead, he tells them, and based on the few that they have already killed. So he essentially calls it even. And I can't quite remember why the party doesn't just accept that, but they don't. I think they just end up straight up attacking him. The wizard tries to cast sleep on the whole room. Hogboon is HD 5, so sleep doesn't affect him. Yeah, the entire, they put a bunch of goblins to sleep and end up slaughtering them. Hogboon casts invisibility on himself and runs away. They have this little goose chase throughout the top level where they're trying to catch Hogboon using like a rope and spreading flour everywhere. Eventually, one of them manages to hear him with the hear noise check, throw a net over him. He kind of rips it off. He fights to the death, and they eventually slay him, taking the ring of the Goblin King, which now belongs to the wizard in the party. So that's what happens in the barrow mound. They killed all the goblins completely. So, I ruled after that point, there's no more goblin encounters, at least in this part of the forest. So they set up they're trying to set up traps and stuff. They're like absolutely sure that the dragon is inside the cave, despite me not telegraphing any evidence of that being the case. So they try and set up like hanging rock traps above the cave entrance, although, by chance we determined that there wasn't really anything suitable for that. So they just kind of fan out in a semicircle, like 100 feet away from the entrance, and just wait. They put their pig in place. The pig just kind of wanders around attached to its stake, snorting, and no dragon comes out. So they wait there for like half an hour to an hour, and eventually I determined that the dragon, we roll in because it says here 3 and 6 chance per turn. Oh no, 3 and 6 chance to return each turn. Eventually the dragon does return. I determined that distance and direction. Luckily, he's coming from the direction that the thief is in. The thief is able to easily jump into bushes and hide. The rest of the party kind of go backs away slowly, and they had all covered themselves in mud to disguise their humanoid scent. I rule that the dragon doesn't notice them. It's a little bit too focused on the pig. It bolts at the pig, rips it to shreds, wanders into its cave. It makes its save, so it doesn't fall asleep. However, it gets extremely drowsy. So it's just chilling in there, and they have no idea what to do. Eventually, because they don't know if it's sleeping or not, eventually the thief creeps up. He makes a couple hear noise checks over the course of 20 minutes or so. I describe the dragon as moving around. So, they assume that they can hear shuffling and stuff. They assume that he's not asleep, which for some reason they thought that the sleep syrup would kick in over time. So they keep waiting. and they almost wait too long to the point that the negative penalty caused by the what was it actually called? The wine. Yes, the magical wine that the dragon has ingested, almost to the point that the magical wine actually wears off. But luckily, they choose to engage with the dragon with like 15 minutes remaining on that. So fortunately for them, the dragon is rolling -3 on all rolls for the entirety of the combat that takes place. So they loose a bunch of volleys into the dragon's cave. Of course, none of them hit. The dragon runs out. Fortunately, they have a 6th level thief on their side, or maybe 5th level at the time. But they have a mid-level thief, so he is able to do some damage. He has a couple magic daggers. They have the Sword of Brandon. They have a magic bow that they got, +1 bow that they got from a previous adventure. It takes them quite a while to realize that the dragon is not susceptible to non-magical attacks. I roll in a dice to determine, which turns he's going to use his breath attacks, and then kind of telegraph that like you would a spell. He does cast his breath attack once, which I think kills 2 hirelings, and then another retainer gets killed by just the claws and the bite. The party's dwarf tank, with his new, full suit of plate armor and shield, also has this Sword of Brandon. Never actually lands a hit on the dragon with the sword, but I think he only gets hit once, and he makes his save for the dragon's strength drain. Beyond all possibility, they do end up slaying the 8 hit dice dragon, who turns back into a dwarf, of course. They loot the treasure hoard and go back to Brandonsford, sell everything. I have a division of the banker guy from Barrow Maze be there, kind of waiting for them to offload their treasure, which he gladly takes 10% cut into his bank, and they proceed with the campaign. So overall, fairly decent adventure. Not nothing too crazy. I think I'm not a huge fan of a lot of the oversimplicity of OSE, like older OSE adventures, because it just misses a lot of the depth that like more AD&D first edition adventure, like style adventures provide. I know it's in the name of terseness and usability and all that stuff, but I think, there are some qualities that do backfire in regards to that, and it makes everything feel a little too shallow for my liking, and it's a little bit difficult to become, get invested in that for me anyways. And of course, there's the layout problems that I mentioned before, the editing mistakes. Definitely far from the worst, and it was a pleasure to run, and the group had a really fun time. And if you've never played like a point crawl or just need kind of an overland adventure for the table, like this is a good way to do it. Again, I wish there were hexes, but this is a good start. It's a good intro adventure for a lot of reasons. I think it teaches a lot of valuable lessons, and there's not really like any massive misses in this. It's all pretty good. The magic items are decent. There's no ridiculously unfair traps or encounters. There's no really, really boring rooms or entries. Everything is pretty much here for a purpose. I just wish it was a little more thought out, had a little bit more depth. No, good job, Chance. I'm excited to play Secret of the Black Crag and his other writings, which I do own and will eventually be introducing at the table. So yeah, overall pretty good. A little bit missing, but I think this is going to please a lot of people, and I mean it obviously has already, and I'm a little bit late to the review here. 3 years ago. So yeah, that's the Black Wyrm of Brandonsford. Pretty good little romp. And good job, Chance. You should play it. It's good. Thanks for watching.